Hello, Internet. Let's talk about me hitting a cow with my car. Just to put some stuff out there right up front, I'm fine. My injuries were very minor. As far as I know, the cow is fine. I walked away from the accident. We believe the owner has recovered them, although I'm not 100% sure of the animal's health or condition. Now, I will be showing some pictures and video, some of which may contain small pieces of fur from the animal. Now, to me, it just looks like fur, but it is possible that there's some blood on the vehicle or animal tissue that I just did not notice, and I will probably not notice until I'm editing. So I just want you to be aware of that. I don't want to upset anybody. Cows are pretty, they're beefy animals. I get it, beef. And in general, unless they break a leg or they catastrophically damage a hoof, they're going to be okay. They're big, sturdy animals. Again, I don't have details on the state of the animal at the moment, so I can't say for sure, but it walking off was a pretty good sign, and that's really something that the farmer is going to deal with. I hope that it's okay, but I'm also, I'm a little more focused on the car and insurance than I am on the well-being of the animal. Maybe that makes me a bad person, I don't know. And the reality is I'm probably never going to know what happened to the animal. I'm not going to be involved. Insurance is going to take over, and I'm never really going to hear about it, so sorry. Oh, and finally, some of the pictures and things were taken vertically with my phone. It's a rookie mistake, I know, but I should have turned the phone sideways to get a normal aspect ratio, but I was a little preoccupied with the loss of my car and all the fallout from that, so most of this will be vertical video. Sorry about that. And on that note, some of the video, I don't have enough footage to make, this is probably going to be like a 20-minute video. I don't have footage for 20 minutes, so there's going to be a lot of me popping up my little avatar here just to fill in some of the gaps. But frankly, most of you probably don't care about most of that. Let's be real, you're a sadist who clicked on this video to hear about a car accident, so let's just jump into it. So I drive for a living. I make deliveries to convenience stores, gas stations, supermarkets, things like that. I used to have a pharmacy, but they don't get stuff anymore, so I just sort of drive around and deliver product. Now, my route takes me all over the place, and although my route changes sometimes and depends on the day of the week, the mileage is usually pretty consistent. On a good night, I might drive 70 miles, and on a really bad night, it might be 110 miles. So I was driving down a road. It's only about 3 minutes from where I'm sitting right now, a road that I've driven every day for probably 5 or 6 years. I believe the posted speed limit there is actually 45, but it's a pretty narrow road, and there are some hills, so I usually don't drive that fast. And we had actually had storms the night of all of this, and I encountered a downed tree in this exact location before, so I was going pretty slow, and there's a big hill there, and I just wanted to be careful and make sure there was nothing in the road. So I'm driving along, everything's pretty normal. I'm looking out my windshield and I see, normal things. I see the road in front of me illuminated by my headlights. It's the same view I see every night. And then suddenly, those were gone. I had no headlights and all I saw was complete blackness. Now, my brain didn't really register what was happening at first, but a large black steer was running in front of my car. So I jerked to the left, trying to go around it, and I slammed on the brakes, trying to avoid the animal, but I was way too close at that point to actually avoid it. There's a very small hill there, so I had come down a big hill, gone up a small hill, and as soon as I came over that small hill, there was a cow in front of my car. And in hindsight, I think if I had jerked to the right and gone off the road instead, I probably would have just scraped by without hitting the cow, but in that moment, I just reacted and I knew there was no way I was going to avoid this animal. Now, I wasn't going terribly fast at this point, or at least I don't think I was. That too, maybe I should say, when I think back to the accident, I only remember pieces of it. Now, I didn't hit my head or anything. It happened very fast and my brain was fixated on a few specific things about it rather than giving me a clear picture of what all actually happened. Hopefully that makes sense. For instance, I don't remember seeing the cow until it was right in front of me and I knew at that point I was going to hit it. I don't think I looked away from the road or anything like that. I just have no memory of seeing that cow or having any indicator that it was there. I just remember hitting it. I don't know how to describe it. It's a weird thing. The cow was black, and I just suddenly went from headlights on the road to just seeing the blackness of the cow blocking all of my vision. Anyway, the time between seeing the cow and hitting it was very, very brief, probably less than a second. I hit the brakes, I tried to swerve, and then I immediately impacted the cow. To be honest, hitting the cow, it didn't really jolt me in my seat or anything. I didn't slam forward, and my seatbelt didn't even lock up or anything like that. I don't know why. Instead, the cow just sort of rolled up onto my hood, and then it settled on my windshield. I don't know if that's like a normal thing or what. I swear it was like I barely hit the thing. I just thought it sort of fell over onto my car is how it seemed. Or maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Cars are designed to absorb impacts. Maybe it was just, the car crumpled and it didn't jolt me because of that. I don't know. Anyway, the windshield broke immediately and it caved in towards me. I felt the glass hitting my forearms, but I didn't feel cuts or anything. I just felt like kind of like raindrops just sort of sprinkled on my forearms. Now the cow was on my windshield for several seconds and there was nothing I could do. I was on the brakes and it was just up to physics, I guess, to decide when it would finally come to a complete stop. I can't see anything at this point, but I've also just sort of given up. Once it's on my car, it's like all you can do is brake. I could literally hear the windshield crackling under the weight of the cow. It's kind of like bending plasticky kind of sound to it. I mean, it's exactly what you imagine kind of glass would sound like if you broke your windshield. It's exactly what you think it sounds like. And in that moment, all I could think, I had this thought while I was having the accident. I was like, I'm about to be crushed into my seat, wedged against my seat with a huge piece of broken glass in front of me, and I'm going to be pinned in place by like a 2,000-pound animal thrashing around trying to get off of me. I could die here. Like I was in the moment, I had these thoughts, and it was very scary. But I stayed on the brakes and I came to a stop. Momentum immediately. The cow just rolled right off of the car as soon as I stopped. Now the police and basically everyone later on, they would ask me, where did the cow go? And I have no idea. People kept asking, well, which way did it run? Whose cow do you think it was? But I have no idea. I had no idea in that moment. After the accident for quite a few seconds, I just sat in my car. I was breathing funny. I don't know. I wasn't crying. I wasn't hurt really. I just needed to sit for a minute. I do cry a lot when bad things happen. So don't get me wrong. I'm a huge crybaby. But with all of this, I was just sort of numb, I guess, and kind of shaken. I was definitely shaken. I was breathing weird. My hands shook quite a bit right after the accident. I didn't know where the cow went. I didn't look at the cow. My concern was just on like, holy crap, this just happened. Anyway, once I got my head about me, I turned on my hazard lights and fumbled for my backpack in the back seat. I had my cell phone, my tablet, all the important stuff that I take with me for work. Thankfully, it was behind the passenger seat on the floor, so it hadn't come up like flying at me or anything. I remember in driver's class, like as a teenager, they talked about loose objects in your car becoming lethal projectiles during a car accident. I mean, I wasn't going that fast, but like it could have smashed me in the head or something if I'd left it on the seat. Now, the windshield had not collapsed in on me, and to be honest, I didn't feel like I was in any immediate danger, although I probably should have immediately gotten out of the vehicle. I mean, I didn't even turn off the engine right away, to be honest, which is something I definitely should have done in case it was leaking like gas or if we had severe engine. I mean, it could have started a fire or something. I don't know. So I just sat in the driver's seat, got my cell phone from the backpack, and I called my house. Now, everyone was sleeping, of course. This was like probably about 2:30 in the morning. So I just left them a quick message. Now, I did go afterwards to my answering machine. I was going to record the message so I could play it for you, but they had already deleted it. Basically, I just said, hey, I hit a cow. I'm going to need someone to pick me up, and I don't know who I'm supposed to call or what to do. Sure, the car is ruined. Can you call me back? And that's when I finally got out of the car. Now, if you've ever been around a cow, which I totally understand that I'm a country boy in the middle of nowhere, and most people don't live like that and probably have never seen a cow in person, but if you've ever been near a cow, particularly a bull or a steer raised for meat, those animals are freaking huge. And I knew that even a low-speed impact with a cow could completely ruin a car. But I was hoping, really hoping, maybe it just broke the windshield. I actually had that thought. I was like, okay, maybe it just rolled up onto the windshield. I have to replace the windshield, but maybe the car is okay. Maybe the engine is okay. I didn't hit it that hard, and I can just get the windshield replaced. But alas, when I forced the door open, which the frame was warped enough that it was hard to get out of the car, when I got out, I saw that the car was ruined. I shut off the engine, then realizing that there could be a fire or fluids. I let that run way too long. And it was around this point that I noticed that my hands were pretty well covered in blood. Now, I didn't take any pictures of my hands, and even if I had, I don't know that I'd share them on YouTube. They actually, fun fact, YouTube can identify blood and things and suppress a video with that type of content even before it's finished uploading, so that's pretty interesting. Now, I did find out later when I was treating my wounds that I was actually completely fine. The injuries on my hands are basically just little tiny pinpricks from glass that they happen to bleed a lot in the moment. They are very small, and as I record this, I mean, it's only a few days later. Honestly, most of them just sort of look like a spot after you pop a pimple or something like that. But at the time, I didn't know that. I just knew my hands were covered in blood. I did not have any napkins or anything in my car, which is also a mistake. Definitely always keep napkins. But I did have my shirt, of course, so I just sort of pressed the fabric of my shirt against my hands to try and stop any bleeding that was there. Probably wasn't a smart thing to do. I'm sure my shirt was filthy at that point, in hindsight, but it's what I did in the moment. My family called me back and asked if I was okay and all that standard jazz that you would normally ask someone after a car accident. Now, they told me I needed to call the police and that they'd come and pick me up and handle everything with insurance. Now, they did tell me specifically to call 911. I used to have, on my old phone, I had the state police barracks number from years and years and years ago when I had some stuff going on with the state police. I did not have that number when I upgraded my phone, so I couldn't call the barracks, and they told me to call 911, not the state police, so I just said okay, and then we hung up and I called it in. Now, the 911 operator seemed pretty irritated with me, to be honest. I called and I immediately said, hey, this isn't really an emergency, because I felt bad for calling 911. It's supposed to be kept for really emergency situations. For anyone who lives outside of the United States, 911 is our emergency line across the country. If you call 911, that's where you get emergency medical, fire department, or police to come out it's not meant to be just called, it's meant to be an absolute emergency when you call those lines. Anyway, the operator kept asking me what township or borough or whatever that I was in, and I just told them I have no idea. I'm out in the middle of the country. They seemed very annoyed and eventually transferred me to the state police barracks anyway, so I ended up talking to the state police. Told them what happened, blah, blah, etc., and they said that they would send a couple police officers out. I was near a T intersection, and I did know the road names of both roads, so I was able to give them some idea of where they needed to go. Now, the guy I talked to told me that I could pull off, or he told me to pull off the road if I was able to do that. Now, I had ended up on the wrong side of the road after the accident. Between trying to swerve and, the few seconds where I had a car blocking my line of sight completely, I was on the wrong side of the road. It's a very rural area, so there are only a few houses out there. Mostly it's just fields. So after I got off the phone, I tried to start the car. Engine sounded pretty normal-ish, at least while I was inside of the cab, and I was able to sort of limp to the right side of the road and partway into the grass. Now, at this point, my bumper was off. It was dragging under the front end, and I was rubbing against my tire, and I did notice later that some metal was jammed up against the tire. I guess it had fallen down from the hood, but things were okay enough for me to pull off the road, so that's something at least. I did manage to find my big flashlight, but my batteries were dying, so I wasn't really able to properly survey the damage, and my blinkers were also broken because my front lights were both damaged from the impact. My hands did stop bleeding around this point, but they were just red and very sticky from the old blood, so that's a lot of fun. My family showed up. Together we looked at the car, using their headlights. There was some debris in the road behind me where the accident had happened, but I didn't want to clean it up because insurance might want pictures of it or whatever. And I started taking pictures of the damage of the car from all sides of the vehicle. It was mostly my front left that was damaged, and then obviously the windshield was and the hood was quite damaged as well. From inside, I could actually see how caved in the windshield was. I actually had some paperwork for my job on the dash, and my family had given me a few newspapers to drop off at the recycling place, and they were both kind of because the windshield caved in, I wasn't able to move them or get my hands into that space. So they were pinned beneath the glass. Mostly they had flopped down into my passenger seat anyway, so the damage to the front end was mostly damaged sheet metal. Everything was crumpled up in the way that it's supposed to crumple up in an accident. My bumper was busted, the grill popped off, and some metal had descended onto the tire. Now, it's hard to tell after an accident how much structural damage was actually done to the vehicle. The front end, to me, does look very squished, but I figured if there had been major damage, it would have stopped. The engine wouldn't have been able to start, so I guess it couldn't have been that bad. And then my driver's side and passenger side window had both been down at the time. Neither of them was broken, but the frame had warped to the point where the driver's door could barely be opened. It's sort of odd because honestly the door looks completely fine, but it's definitely busted. The police arrived maybe 10 minutes after my family came. They asked me what happened. I gave them a brief rundown. The reality is that the accident happened in a very short period of time, and I couldn't really remember very many details. They immediately asked me, where did the cow go? Which direction? And I told them I don't know. I was looking and thinking about my car. I did not think about the animal at all. Feel kind of bad about that. You know, it is a living creature that could have been really badly injured. I maybe should have given a little bit more concern to the animal, but I just, in that moment, was so focused on my car. They did look around with their spotlight, and they actually thought they thought they saw the cow, so they took off driving away, but they just came back a bit later. They couldn't find it. Now, at the time, I thought this was really strange that they were so fixated on the cow, but I found out later that in this type of situation, the cow's owner is actually responsible for damages because, you know, obviously the cow should have been kept in a pen and not allowed to wander in the road where there's traffic. So I guess they were looking for it because cows are chipped or tagged or whatever. They all have identifying tags and brand marks, that kind of stuff. And it would have led them to the owner who would have been responsible for the accident. Now, the cops surveyed the scene. They asked me a few basic questions. I don't really remember what they asked me. I do remember he asked me how fast I was going, and I told him, like, I don't really speed. You know, I was going slow because I was worried that there were tree limbs down in the road after our major storm. And he just said, oh, you're not going to get in trouble for speeding. But, like, I legitimately, I don't really speed and had been going. You know, everybody knows that guy who, like, you're sitting in the passenger seat, and they always drive precisely the speed limit, and they annoy the crap out of you. That's me. I know everybody speeds. I drive precisely the speed limit at all times and slower when I actually have a reason to. So, but anyway, I don't really speed. I definitely was going pretty slow. Plus the damage to the car, as bad as it looks, it's nothing compared to what would have happened if I'd hit that car going like 45 miles per hour. I would have been trapped in my car beneath a windshield with that animal inside the cab of my vehicle. It would have been terrible. So, thankfully was going pretty slow. Anyway, they gave us some paperwork. It has a case number for our insurance company. And while I'd been talking to the cops, my family member called our insurance. And then I guess they called for a tow as well. We were expecting a tow truck. The police had another call, so they actually left before the tow truck arrived, but it came just a few minutes later. During this time, I had been gathering all my work stuff out of the car. I still, you know, after all of this, I still had to go back to work when this was all finished. So I spent my time in front of the headlights. I was checking the product that I deliver, you know, for damage, for glass, things like that. I obviously don't want to deliver something that has glass in it. Thankfully, everything was pretty much in the back of the vehicle. No glass had really made its way back there. I was covered in it, though. My shirt, for instance, it looked like I was covered in glitter with all these little tiny splinters of glass. You know, in movies, I don't know. I thought it would be like big cubes of glass, but it wasn't. It was like all these really tiny splinters of shards of glass. Also, and I have no idea how this happened, but my shoes were completely filled with broken glass. I could barely walk. Kept trying to bang them out, clean them out, but they were just, I could feel it cutting up my feet. I don't know how it all got in my shoes, but yeah. Those shoes were already in bad shape. I did end up throwing them away when I got home. I don't know how I would have cleaned out all the little glass pieces. But anyway, tow truck came. You know, we talked for a bit. They started loading it up. I did take a video, but I also did not want to record the guy. And again, this video is vertical. Sorry about that. But they loaded it up. They towed it back to our house. We knew insurance would want to come pick it up to look at it themselves, and we didn't want to pay to store it, so we just put it in our yard. They actually, today, as I record this, they picked it up about like 30 minutes ago. And we went home. I needed to clean up, and my family member, you know, directed the tow truck driver, took care of all that for me while I, you know, washed the blood off of me and that kind of stuff. Tried to get the glass off of me before we headed in the house, but I was still covered in it. I mean, I came in, we have animals, so I was really trying to mind where I was to prevent glass from getting near the animals. I ended up throwing away my shoes, my socks, and my shirt because they were all embedded with glass and had blood on them. I didn't really know how to clean them without risk of glass. Like, you can throw shoes in a washer, but I didn't want to get glass in our washing machine, right? Obviously. So thankfully I had another pair of shoes since the other pair was already on the way out. They were dying, but now I'm wearing these black sneakers, which I think I look ridiculous with black sneakers and light colored clothing, but hey, it's what I have. The shirt was brand new too. That was a huge bummer to get blood all over my new shirt. But anyway, so I changed. I started cleaning my hands. I washed the blood off my hands. I found that the wounds were actually just really, really tiny pinpricks. They just happened to bleed a lot. I have multiple small punctures. They kind of look like bug bites, I guess, but they were from splinters of glass. I washed my hands thoroughly. The only disinfectant I had was hydrogen peroxide, so I just sort of dumped that over my forearms and my hands, let it fizz a little bit, and then washed my hands and forearms again just to be careful. I don't know if I did a good job or not. The next day I found that some of them had puffed up kind of like big pimples and were pretty sore. I figured they might have been a little infected. Mostly now as I record this, it's a few days later and they're all fine, so nothing huge there. Now again, I had been looking to buy a new car anyway. I'd been struggling to put together any real amount of money, and COVID drove used car prices way up, as well as lowering the amount of available inventory. I've managed to save a little bit of money, and I'm really hoping that insurance will give me a decent amount and I'll be able to get a new car, but ultimately, this put me in a really rough spot. In addition to my car now being dead, the family junk car that we had died a few weeks before that, had permanent engine damage, so we weren't able to get that fixed. And here in my script, I wrote, so now we're basically sharing one functional SUV, but fun fact, internet, the alternator died in that SUV yesterday. So we're down to a truck that barely runs. We were a 4-vehicle family. We have a lot of people who live in the house and use these vehicles, so we have a lot of vehicles around. 3 of the 4 are now not functional, and the only one we have left is the truck. I'm worried I'm going to lose my job. Things are really bad. They're a lot worse now than they were when I wrote this basic outline script thing that I'm using to tell this story. So things are real bad for us. I'm worried I'm going to lose my job. I did find a Taurus just recently. I saw that was pretty cheap. I'm going to end up going in debt. I don't know how to. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. You probably don't care. Let's move on. Probably some debt in my future. It is what it is. Since then, we've tracked down who the cow probably belonged to. We talked to an older guy. He lived right there. He said it was most likely his son's steer because it was missing. As far as we know, the animal is fine. I believe that they've recovered it, but I'm sure it was dinged up and traumatized by getting hit by a car. I feel pretty miserable about that. Like at first I was just like, oh no, I hit a cow. And then later on I was like, oh, that poor cow. Like, I didn't really think about the cow at first, but it wasn't, it was just minding its own business. It doesn't know what a road is and all that stuff. So I feel kind of bad. I mean, I hit a cow. That's pretty terrible. When I posted the last little video about the accident, everybody asked me about the cow. I didn't even think to mention it. I mean, it's a cow. We're almost done. I hear my neighbor mowing their lawn. I'm just going to push through for like another couple minutes real quick. Sorry about that. I'm sure the cow was scared, probably a little injured, but I don't know anything about its long-term condition or prognosis or whatever. Like I said earlier, they are pretty sturdy animals as long as their legs and their feet are okay. And I mean, it's a cow it's a steer, right? Steer are raised for meat. It was a very large animal. It's probably near the end of its life cycle anyway. I know that that's really dark to suggest that, but like it is what it is. They're raised for meat, so worst case scenario, they will just butcher the cow, which is horrible. But I don't know. And the reality is, I'm never gonna hear anything about this cow again. I'm never gonna know what happens with it. I'm never gonna know, even because like we've turned it over to insurance, right? At this point, the insurance has collected our car. They have the police report. The police were involved. I'm sure they will contact the owner to try and get them to pay for whatever insurance, because insurance doesn't want to pay, right? They're going to try to make someone else be responsible for it. So I'm sure they're going to interact, but we're never going to hear about this guy or his cow again. So I'm never going to know. And I know that's really unsatisfying. And listen, I eat meat, but I don't like thinking about that an animal is actually killed to make my meat, if that makes sense. So anything I say about this is just going to be really dark and sad. So I don't have anything really about the cow. And yeah, internet, that's the lengthy saga of me hitting a cow with my car. Scared me really a lot when it happened. When the cow was on, the time between the cow being on my windshield and me coming to a complete stop was terrifying because I could hear the windshield breaking. I could see nothing. All I saw was cow on my windshield, and I thought this is going to come in and crush me, and I'm going to die from being cut up and crushed beneath because cows are like 2,000 pounds. Like a steer is no joke. They're massive animals. Very, very scary. So in the moment, I was very shook up, but I'm okay. Financially, I'm probably really screwed, but we'll see what insurance does. I'll mention in my content if I can find a new car, but I think I'm facing some debt here, and it's tough times for my family, and I'm not doing good, frankly. This is the first time I've recorded this week. I've been so numb and just like not even depressed. I've ascended or descended beyond depression, and I just shifted into like that survival mode of I'm numb, I'm just going through the motions. Every day is terrible, just make it to tomorrow. That's where I'm at right now. I know it might not sound that way. This is just a car accident. It doesn't sound like it would be that big of a deal, really, but it has screwed up my life a lot. This last week has been terrible for me and my family, and we're all concerned about how we're going to manage with the vehicles. So things are bad right now. I will keep people posted in my content and stuff. Again, my content will probably be pretty sporadic here in the future. I just don't feel we're dealing with a lot of stuff and I don't feel up to it, basically. And you can take that however you want to take it. But yeah. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in some other video.